speaking about success, how can we guarantee a successful marketing campaign or launch for like a small business?
Yeah, that one is in how much work you put in before, during, and after. It's about doing as much to understand what you're trying to achieve before you actually go out and start doing the work. Then doing the necessary preparation to actually do the steps you need to get the outcome that you need to get, right? And then when you're actually doing the steps, paying enough attention to what you're doing that when you repeat the steps again, you do more of the stuff that works and less of the stuff that didn't. So when I said that, it was super vague. So I'm going to try to make it a little more practical now, right, from a marketing perspective.
Oh, there we go. People like, guys, whoa, this is serious.
What's up, Dimple?
Hi, how are you?
I'm alright, and yourself?
I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
Wow, okay. Wow.
exactly. The boy had to go all out.
Like, we need to up the way, you know, like, okay, alright. So if you come up with like the blue, purple theme behind that, I think we should go green.
Let's get it.
Inventing money and growth, you see?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, 100%.
I think we should do that. So before we even start, how was the day and how did you spend it?
Standard, we were working. Edits is mostly what we do, like on a day-to-day basis. And the day was, I can't complain. We made it to the end of the day. We're tired, but this is the life that we live. So we're just happy to be here. Like, for real.
When you say we, are you referring to the team and you, or?
Yeah, so the team and I, they're actually here at the moment. Brazil's my editor at the back there, hard at work. And then I got Marlon, who assists with all of the administration and governance, also taking some BTS here. So we're active. We're active.
Super awesome. Kudos to the team for borrowing you for. I don't know how this conversation is gonna last, but it's gonna last and then be fruitful.
Yes, ma'am.
So getting into it, just explain to our viewers who Nigel is outside of what you do and what your business is.
For sure. So, yeah, my name is Nigel Nyathi. I am a creative. That's effectively how all of this started. When I used to make a lot of music, right? And obviously at a certain point I realized that we need more visuals for the music so that people can actually like find us, because that's the age we lived in. And as I started to make more and more videos, more people were talking about the videos than they were the music, which is ultimately what made us realize that, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity in here where we can still express ourselves creatively, right? But then at the same time, we can start incorporating things which provide more value to the marketplace. Music adds a lot of value, but it is much harder to translate that value, especially when the rent is due. So it just naturally escalated to this point. And what I guess ultimately ended up happening is now I'm here. I run the digital marketing agency Toon Enterprises. And what we do is we help busy business owners just supercharge their marketing by creating killer content. So that has been this phase of our life, and that's currently who we're helping.
So, in terms of your business, what inspired the name behind the business?
Sure. So, like I said, I started in music, right? My inspiration was Lil Wayne, from the dreads to the way I talked to the way I dressed. Yeah, literally. And eventually I realized that, okay, I'm too much on Wayne, because it was at the time he came out of jail, and then he was going by the name Toon, right? Tune. And then so I pretty much copied that. I was a copy and paste. I was like, man, I love you so much, I'm just gonna be you. Like, that's it. That I want to be you. Yeah. But eventually, as I started to grow, I wanted my own identity, but I'd already started establishing, I guess, a name under Toon. So I rebranded, and then it was TOON. And not too long after that, a friend actually approached me and was like, man, what does Toon even mean? Because I always used to say Toon because I wanted to distinguish between Toon and Toon. And then he then came up with the moniker, the one and only Nigel. And that in itself led to all of the things which became extensions of me. So it started off with Toon Music, then it became Toon Film, and then I was like, you know what, now we're serious business, so let's call ourselves Toon Enterprises. And that's how we ended up here.
And that's super awesome. Seeing that in my research, let me know if I'm wrong, you can write, right? You have some financial background. But is it, oh, like, hey, in the research, right?
Yeah.
How does that financial background or your education rather inform your business ambitions?
Sure. Yeah. So for context, that is actually very crazy. It's really cool to hear that you actually went and did your research. So that financial background actually comes from the corporate side of my life, right? And effectively how that informed the business and how we operate was I started getting, so remember, again, one more time, I started in music. So I was very much artistic in the way that I represented myself, right? But that professional element didn't exist, right? I did not have conversations with like C-suite executives and just people whose mindset was around business value and all of those elements. So once I started getting that financial / corporate background, I started getting into rooms where I was forced to talk to people in that way, right? And it also started teaching me that a lot of the time, if you're trying to get people to make a big business decision, then you don't approach it from an emotional angle. Rather, you need to be rational about your approach, which means if you're going to be rational about it, there's a certain level of analysis which needs to be done, right? So it started off very light. I used to do very small things, but over time you start doing bigger and bigger things, and before you know it, you're now doing market analysis and you love data and all of those things. And when you speak about it, you talk about it in their language, right? So then what it then did is it took my art side and introduced it to a business side, which meant I could still speak to my team of creatives and I could still envision certain things and like you have that eye, but at the same time translate what that eye is seeing into something that business stakeholders could see as valuable. So that's how that ultimately came about.
And how important is it for small businesses, even corporates, to understand how to make that transition? Because it's either small businesses focus on the product and not necessarily the business, or the other way around. And now it's like we have to make this transition make sense, because now if we want to step into a global market, now if we want to step into a ShopRite or Checkers or what have you, or have that business language in boardrooms, they find it very difficult. So how were you able to then be like, at small business, here I am at Business Tuesday, now use your arts or whatever you've created and translate it into this? How does that conversation start with a small business?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe let me just make sure I got this question right? How do you understand? Are you asking how do you learn to incorporate the love of product with the love of business as well, so that you're not just skewed to one side?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for me personally, it was because I got burnt, right? In that when I used to make music, I thought I had the business side on lock as well, but really I focused a lot on the product, on the art. And that manifests in a lot of ways. And I think I'll try and relate this to a small business owner perspective. You start to adopt this, when you focus too much on the product, you start to adopt this mentality that no one knows my product like me. No one can make my product like me. No one can do the things that I can do. Therefore, I'm going to have my hands in all the parts. And unfortunately, what that does is then it makes you the bottleneck for progress, because there's only so much you can do at a certain amount of time, right? So when I was making music, I did everything. I made the beats. I mixed the vocals. I shot my own videos. But it meant all of this, like if I was working on beats, then the music videos were paused. The social media posts were paused. Everything was paused. And you grow very slowly. And what that means in very, very real terms is you make less money over a longer period of time. And that was the pain that I suffered there. But then when I moved over to the marketing agency and we started focusing more on creating this content for other business owners, I became less attached to the art of it, right? Because now it didn't feel like this thing that we're doing was a representation of me. And then I started to skew a lot more to the business side. But then unfortunately what tends to happen there is then you lose touch with the soul of your product, right? You stop trying to iterate and you just start trying to do more very quickly so that you can scale the business. But then what that means is you start putting out a more and more diluted version of the product because you're doing this so quickly that you're not giving people in your team enough time to learn how to do it the way it really should be done. And you also then become the kind of manager, the kind of leader who isn't giving people the space to learn and grow because you're just focused on, we just need to get volume out here. We just need to get the stuff out just so that we can grow the business as quickly as possible. And when you start to feel the pain of each of those extremes, you then start realizing that it's very important that we focus on developing the product, but I don't need to be the main bottleneck of the product. Let me give everybody an opportunity to input on this, and let me trust that the people I'm hiring to do what they need to do can actually do those things. But at the same time, we need to make sure that everything we're doing is scalable and we're not getting stuck too much in the product, right? We need to get it out there so that we can learn the lessons around how can we make this better. And then you start working on that. Then it becomes that balance. So that's ultimately when you start to realize that you can't be too skewed, and there's a balance that you need to learn. But with everything, it's you learn. You're okay, I'm going too hard now to release. I released too much, let's go hard again.
Yeah. With what you're saying, you kind of remind me of Mr. Tambobayo, who once said you can't be a jack of all trades, right? Because also then when you think of jack of all trades, guys, would all feel adult alive, right?
100%.
And also remembering that letting go of a certain process does not mean that you kind of not overlook it at the end of the day, because it has to have your final signature at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So that, what do we say to business owners who are like, you know what, man, I've got this. Mina ni strong, mina ni Hulk. Yeah, don't get it, right? And who are refusing to let go of that control, because now they're seeing it's my small business, you know what I'm saying? And in their dreams, they want to scale, but then it's a thing of you have to let go when you're at a scale, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be a jack of all trades, then you're not going to be able to grow. And looking at how small businesses function, they only function in their own communities or in their own neighborhoods, should I say, and not the community at large, right? So then how do we get small entrepreneurs to have that mindset that you have to be like, okay, guys, I'm not a jack of all trades, but here's a bit of control, here's a bit of control. But at the end of the day, leaders, because they're ultimately leaders or supervisors, right? In a sense, to be like, my final signature as Mr. Nyathi is right down at the dotted line. So how do we get our local entrepreneurs to start thinking in a global sense from a marketing perspective? Yeah.
So this answer might sound a little bit crazy, right? But the approach that I have isn't necessarily the right one, right? There is no right one. But what you then need to understand is there's a trade-off. So you can be Mr. Jack of all trades. You can control your product and be like, this all comes from me. I'm going to do everything. But then what the trade-off then is, you're going to build a lot slower, right? And you're not going to be able to serve as many people as you can if you have a team, right? The nice thing about that, I guess, so all of this comes from like my business hero, right? Whenever you're looking at these two parts, is he calls it the artist and something else. Basically, the artist is someone who's like, the example that they give is, I make purses and I make incredible purses, and these purses are art to me, but I'm gonna make 1 to 2 purses a month, right? The trade-off there is, you make a lot less. It's going to take you much longer. You're going to be very frustrated and fatigued if like you're trying to push very hard. But you can also charge like artist prices. You can be like, you know what, there's only 2 of these, right? So therefore, this is going to be a lot more expensive. But that's the trade-off. Then if you decide to be someone who's scaling, then the trade-off there now is you need to be able to actually trust other people. You need to be able, like right now, I have no idea what Brighton's doing over there, but I trust that at the end of the day when he's done, it's going to be super dope, because that is what you ultimately then need to like effectively give up, right? And part of that giving up of control is you're not going to be the sole voice in terms of this creation, because the people working with you have their own minds too. They're like, yeah, but we should do it like this and like this. And then you need to have the humility as a leader to be like, you know what, okay, maybe I don't have all the answers. Let me sit down and listen to the point that you have, which again is a trade-off, because it is very difficult to humble yourself and be like, I don't have all of the answers, teach me, sensei, right? But then of course what you gain there is like you produce way more. You start to actually innovate without even realizing you're innovating, because you're getting all of these different ideas from all of these different sources of people who've lived different lives and have different perspectives, right? And you also get to sell a lot more, because I'm talking to you right now, but we have content that's being produced and is about to go out to our clients, right? So that then becomes what you need to factor in, and what do you want for your life?
With that knowledge, right, you've now shown us like the politics of what a business can be and should be in its wholesome, right? But now there are a couple of problems, right? In when you're marketing a product, or when you splash PR or advertising in a sense, right? What have you recognized or identified in terms of a marketing perspective, PR, advertising perspective, that local businesses lack?
Sure. Really, right? It is just the confidence to start where they are. Because a lot of the time what we do is we look at the platforms that we want to advertise our businesses on, and we look at the upper extremes of what content Nike is producing, or the very biggest brands they're making, right? And then we look at our phones and we're like, wow, my content does not look like that. So therefore, I'm not gonna focus on that until I have all of the equipment and whatever that might actually be. And then unfortunately what that ends up doing is so this is based off like the people we've spoke to, right? It then starts to create problems in people start relying on word of mouth to be the way that they're advertising solely. And the problem is, in the beginning, while it's still a small business, there's not too many people that you're servicing, and you're probably not servicing at the level yet that as soon as they leave your establishment or as soon as they get your product, they're going to go brag about it to all their friends, right? So unfortunately then it slows down growth, and then it starts to create horrible perceptions on how effective marketing can really be, because they look at the market and they're like, right now I'm already struggling to sell my 500 Rand product. So how am I going to pay you all this money like to do this? Or how am I going to make sure that like my employee who I need to pay this much, or myself, how am I going to pull away from the rest of the work that I'm doing to go shoot this video when there's nobody out there who's going to like, buy my stuff. So I think when you haven't just started where you are and you haven't started to get those initial trickles of like feedback from the market, it really hampers your marketing efforts, because it makes it seem like a much bigger monster than it actually is. But if you start where you are, you very quickly start to learn that, you know what? Even with my crappy little phone and whatever this looks like, there's still people who are like engaging on some level. Or there's somebody who asked me about, hey, that thing that looked like a shoe that I saw in that pixelated video of yours, are you selling that? How much is it? Then people start to realize that, I actually can get inquiries, right? And those initial sales, that initial feedback will start helping you get all of the pieces that you need much further along the line to do all the other things that you need to do, assuming you're reinvesting back into the company.
They must have reinvest. Oh, that also another issue that I realized, right? You become business owners, entrepreneurs, call it what you want, right? And we sell the shoe, or we get you to do the advertising, the marketing, right? It looks glamorous, and they're buying. And then you get some entrepreneur like, now I can afford that Gucci shirt I ordered that like for 10 years.
Yeah.
And how do we then go, businesses? Please do not strive for that Gucci shirt. We know it's shiny. We know it's great. But the most important thing that you have to do, or that you must do, or force yourself to do, is reinvesting in your business. Explain to people what it means to reinvest in their business. Because I think we use the term reinvest, and then it's like, directing it back to my business, what about me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm here being like, what about me, bruh? I also need a shirt. I also need a pants to go out there. You know what I mean? So what does it mean to reinvest?
Yeah. So before I get into that, right, I want to say that I am very far from perfect. I am very far from where I'd love to be from a self-discipline point of view. So sometimes I also want like the really, really cool stuff, right? And sometimes I buy it and then I walk out the shop and I'm like, you probably shouldn't have done that, but we're here, right? But I think one of the easiest ways, something that helps me, is having ambitions greater than like 1 or 2 steps in front of you. So the Gucci shirt is awesome, but I would much rather have a Cullinan, right? And then I'm assuming by the time I get there, the Cullinan is nice, but I would much rather be able to wake up in the morning, shoot a group text in the WhatsApp group and tell my entire family that, guys, we're going to Spain today. Make sure your passport's all right. If you have an issue, hit me up and I'm going to call my contact at the agency. And those kind of things then help you see that there's a lot more to life than that thing that you can get right now. And then you're like, you know what, because I want that even bigger thing, I'm going to reinvest into myself. And before you know it, you'll look around and you'll be like, I've got all of this stuff, and all of this stuff is helping me make way more money than I would have made if I just stayed with just the little stuff I had, but now I have like a much nicer shirt, right? Yeah. So I think that is, for me, and I'm talking from my perspective, that's the easiest way I found to like have the self-discipline to choose reinvesting over spending for something right now. And that's having much bigger goals than the money that you currently have can afford for you. So then you're like, you know what, I can't get what I really want, so I may as well throw this back in the business and make it bigger so that I can actually get what I really want. But ambition tells you that what you really want is gonna always be this like carrot on a stick that's like so far that you keep chasing it and you never really get it. But you're gonna look around and all of a sudden you have a life that you once prayed for.
Yes, nice. That's truth right there.
Yeah.
I don't want to be emotional about it, but you're absolutely speaking truth in terms of, because the Gucci shirt or whatever we desire in the moment is temporary, right? It's not like that Spain trip where you get to invite your 19 family members. You're like, yes, we got to work for this with like 10, 15, like 2 years, and now we're here, right? Because
Yeah.
it does not automatically happen like the next day. We don't become, the Nigel that we are like 15 years from now tomorrow. You get what I
Yeah.
mean? It takes a long time. It takes longevity. And what I want to ask is, what challenges are you currently experiencing or have experienced in your business where you were like, yo, dala am angal. I asked what to wait three, but it's a challenge, but you're going to get through it.
Yeah. So the very, very real one that we're struggling with at the moment is just the cash flow to do all the things that we want, right? So the scenario that we're in is we've got work, right? And the work pays us, we can't complain, right? It pays for everything that we can do. But when you have, like I say, these lofty ambitions, which are much bigger than 1 or 2 steps in front of you, then it starts to force you to start thinking about, okay, but how can I actually get there, right? How can I actually start doing all of these things that I want to do? And then you start to very quickly realize that what you have is a resource problem, right? And one of the easiest resources to use is money. Like there's something which is really, really awesome that another one of my business heroes says is, you don't need resources, you just need to be resourceful. So you can start talking to people and making certain trades, or you can just come up with very clever ways in order to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. But the easiest way to do those things is just to use money as your tool, right? And I am all for how can I do things in the easiest way possible? Which then means, okay, cool, then let's solve the cash flow problem. How can we then start generating more cash without increasing the amount of expenses that we have, right? So that is the business problem that we're solving at the moment, which is, it keeps me up at night. It keeps me up at night because like I say, when you have all of these lofty ideals, they scream at you and they tell you that there's still more work to be done. You can do this much better. You can improve all of these things. You can make a much better product. So why aren't you? And then you start going down that path. But that is our biggest problem at the moment. That is, yeah.
And how you as a leader able to map out your plan, right? Because you've said already, you see the vision where you wanna go. The thing is, how you get there, it's misty. We can't see it. Dude, it is raining not so long ago. Not hey, how do we get here? And now everyone as a leader, they're looking at you, right? It's not solely you. You have people dependent on you to carry them through the situation or the challenge or the success, right? So how are you as a leader able to map out, even though you don't have it all figured out, but at least be okay, I know A and B, C I don't know, but we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
And how are you able to map that out?
Okay, so I'm learning, right? I'm literally learning. So maybe in 5 years I'll watch this and I'll look back and I'm like, yeah, no, dude, that was the wrong approach. But you know what? We figured it out. But the way I do it right now is just honesty and transparency. I look at everyone that I work with and I'm like, guys, I'm figuring this out. This is my first time going through all of this. So I'm probably gonna get some of these things wrong. But here's what I'm thinking. If we do ABC, it's gonna result in X. It might not result in X, but I have a pretty good feeling it's gonna result in X, and this is the rationale behind it. And then at that point, what you need is a team that trusts you, that they're like, alright, we're gonna trust you, let's do ABC and let's see how it works. And then you do it, right? And then it either works or it doesn't work. If it works, then everybody celebrates, that trust gets reinforced. If it doesn't work, I own up to it and I'm like, I really, really thought that was gonna work, right? And funny enough, okay, I might be wrong, this is me just thinking, but it also reinforces the trust. They're like, cool, we tried it, it didn't work, but at least you were honest with us. How do we fix this, right? And what's also really great and what I appreciate is the people that I work with will tell me like, my boy, we messed up. Like we messed up. We need to go back to the drawing board. We need to figure this out. But then at least before you know it, like you said, you start getting certain things right, you get certain things wrong, you guys all talk, you internalize it, and the steps become more and more clear because you start eliminating some of the guesswork. And pretty soon you're just left with the right options. And that, I think, for me, what leadership is, right? Management is actually holding people's hands and saying, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. Leadership is, we are right now in like the belly of the beast. It is dark, but trust me that we're going to make it out of here, and let's keep walking. And then people keep walking. They don't get stuck and paralyzed in fear. That is what leadership is for me, right? So as long as you're honest with people and being like, I believe this way is the right way, let's try and figure it out, then eventually it works and it starts to map out your path. But you come up with the hypothesis, share it with the team, you try it, you learn from your mistakes, and everybody is accountable for the wins and losses, and that's how we do it.
Yeah, that's true. And what I like about the way or your maturity, you could have gone other route. I don't know other route, but for you to say transparency is important, for me it's like, yeah, no. The brain is working, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think even in your alone time, or when you're alone, or try to figure things out alone, you're like, I have to tell myself the truth here. Figure it out, but here's what I have. Like you said, start with what you have. And honestly, it holds you accountable to being like honest and truthful in that sense. And I think when you start having the team and when you start having employees, etc., you're able to transfer that transparency to be like, and let's try this out. If it doesn't work, okay, sure, fine, we tried it. At least there isn't that thing of, what if we did this? What if we did that? Because one thing I realized with local businesses or businesses that are serving a community, it's what if. And then external forces come in, yeah, no, you're doing your business wrong, or prices are wrong here, and your product this, your product is that, and then people say that what if, and you're like, but why? You haven't tried.
Yeah.
You haven't done it, and now you're gonna die and if, like what if? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think from what you've been saying and what I've gathered is transparency is honestly a way forward, because then you're able to fail forward rather than backwards, because then that does not create fear, it creates the trust. Even if the victory wasn't won, at least the thing of like, oh, okay, at least I don't know what happened, you know what I mean? At least now it's like, okay, at least now we failed, like we know how it feels to fall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with that process, Nigel and Dimpo and whomever, they were honest about it. Unlike, guys, let's do this, let's do that. And then let's fall. And then, guys, we've fallen. Business is over. Like with that. Guys, we are not for employees. I was an employee myself. So, guys, let's just go back to corporate. But we've ultimately failed. So I'm thankful for your transparency at your level of awareness in that regard as well. So my next question is, if businesses cannot afford services like yours, right? What do they then do? How do we then progress to eventually getting a service from guys like you, or from you even? Hey, whoever's looking like, hey.
Yeah. So I'll phrase it firstly like, if you do still want to work with us, right, but you can't actually afford like our, I guess let's call it our flagship offer, right? What we do is we create tons of content, sharing all of the lessons and learnings that we're going through. Because again, I think really it is like a core theme for us, which is transparency and openness about how we're doing, right? Because the only way we can ever really learn, and I guess subsequently the way the community that we're trying to build can also learn, is if we talk about the things that work and the things that didn't work and where we're killing it and where it killed us, right? So we make tons of content on that. We've also created a WhatsApp community where we're going to be sharing as much lessons, insights, all of the guides, templates, things that we're making and using. We're just going to be giving that all away there, right? And then at that point, just do what we're doing, right? And then you can achieve somewhat similar results, maybe even better results, whatever the case is. We'll learn, like we'll watch you do that thing too, and then we're like, so when Dimpo did that, like it actually worked really well. Guys, take note, we're doing that too, right? So that's one way if you do still want to work with us. But if you're trying to like also just figure this out and go out there and do it on your own, then I say again, stop where you are, right? Stop where you are, pick up the phone that you have, figure out who you want to talk to, right? Figure out what your message actually is, and think about what you actually need to do to actually get like people to buy what you need without you like hitting them over the head and saying, buy what I have, right? What are the things about your product or your offer that ultimately people want? Why would they buy this, right? Not what are the features, but what is the benefits at the end when they actually consume this. And then find as many creative ways to actually talk about that on social media. And eventually you will start to gain traction, right? As long as you're learning from what you're doing and you're not just doing the same thing over and over again and just not iterating, right? Then before you know it, you'll actually be making the kind of like, you'll be gaining the traction that you can now start to again reinvest in your business. And soon enough, if you don't want to still manage that, then that's when you can hit us up, because I'm sure at that point you've also probably learned enough, made enough that like we make sense. Yeah.
So we've got a comment in the chat from that guy Heather. I think I'm saying it right. Hey, said, "Ayo, I saw that F&B gig. How did you propose to them?"
Yeah. So very cool story. I will tell it in under 30 seconds. I'll try my absolute best. So the connection wasn't actually directly through F&B, right? There was a business owner on Instagram who we liked what they were doing, and one of the I guess core tenets that we believe in is give value first, and then you make your ask, right? So what we did was we approached this business owner and we're like, yo, we see that you do these workshop style things, and we know you have a team and people already, you're clearly very established, you're doing well for yourself. What we'd love to do is just come, even if we're like on the side there in the corner, we just want to put our camera, shoot some content, and then just show you what we can do. And even if you don't like it, you'd be helping us as a business that's trying to come up, because we can then use that footage to just show other people what we can do. And you don't need to pay us for this. Like us being here, the content that we're gonna get, the interaction we're gonna have with you is valuable enough in itself, right? We did that work for them. They actually liked the work that we did, and then we started having conversations around how effectively the F&B work. So the thing is, right, that's not the first time we did that, but that's the first time it worked out that well. And what the lesson there is, not every swing is going to be a home run. Not everything is going to be like this big thing that helps you, but everything ultimately helps you become the person that you ultimately need to be. Because the times we did that before, we probably didn't phrase it right. Maybe our content wasn't good enough yet. Maybe whatever happened, maybe it just wasn't the right day. Maybe it wasn't the right person. But you still learn and you develop as a person and as a business that on the next attempt that you do, you are now much better off than the previous attempt that you did, and you're that much closer to a yes, right? And that one yes will literally change your life. Like, it will literally change your life, and it will start the rest of the motion that you need to, like I say, become who you need to be. But you need to be able to put your pride aside and be willing to give value first, with the possibility of getting nothing in return. Right? That's the thing.
So, speaking about success, how can we ensure, or how do we know, or how can we guarantee a successful marketing campaign or launch for like a small business?
Yeah. So that one is in how much work you put in before, during, and after, right? So there is no silver bullet to success. It's about doing as much to understand what you're trying to achieve before you actually go out and start doing the work. Then doing the necessary preparation to actually do the steps you need to get the outcome that you need to get, right? And then when you're actually doing the steps, paying enough attention to what you're doing that when you repeat the steps again, you do more of the stuff that works and less of the stuff that didn't. So when I said that, it was super vague. So I'm going to try to make it a little more practical now, right? From a marketing perspective. When you start off, let's say, so I'll speak from our perspective whenever we're working with our clients. We start off with understanding, where do you need to go, right? Ultimately, what are you trying to achieve? What is your goal? Let's say you run a clothing boutique, right? And what you say is, I'm trying to get 200 sales per month, right? I want 200 cards shipped off per month, right? And then it's about, okay, cool, that's where you want to be. Let's establish where are you right now and how are you doing at the moment. What they'll tell us is, okay, cool, we're doing XYZ activity, or we're doing no activity, whatever the case might actually be, and it's resulting in this. What then you do from that perspective when you're shaping that marketing campaign is you're like, okay, cool, what do we think is what the activity that we need to do to get people to actually start coming in? So for instance, we know that we need to show more people our clothes on real people. We need to also show them the kind of people that wear our clothes so that it aligns with the brand that we need. And we also need to show people that we're this brand that represents love and happiness, whatever the case might actually be. Those are the three activities that we're going to do, and we believe each of those activities are going to lead to more people visiting our website, right? And ultimately, we can then start to optimize how well our website sends people to where they need to go. Know what you need to do and where you need to go. Watch the steps you do so that you will improve them later on. Now you start creating that content. Now you start building those marketing strategies, and you'll know that, okay, when we make a funny video and then we also follow that up with a story that has a questionnaire about, in that funny video, which shirt did you like, the blue one or the pink one that guy was wearing? PS, we saw both of them, whatever the case might be. You see how many people are interacting with that post, right? And then once those people interact with that post, how many of them then go onto your website to go actually see that shirt, right? For instance, let's say in your marketing strategy, like we post a video, we post a story that talks about what they saw in the video. Whoever reacts, we're going to DM those people and say, oh, you like the blue shirt? Guess what? We've got a special on it right now that if you get it with this pair of jeans, then you get each 50% off. That's our strategy to get people to buy. Pay attention to each of the things you did there. And then when you get to the end of the campaign or the end of the month, you're like, okay, how many people saw our post? 1,000 people. How many people saw the story? 100 people saw the story. Okay, how many people interacted with our story? 10 people. Okay, of those 10 people that interacted with it, how many people went onto our website and made a purchase? 2 people. Cool. Where would the biggest drop off, right? Clearly 1,000 people watching our video, that was great, but only 100 people saw the story. How can we increase the amount of people that watch that story? And then you start slowly making little increments like that every month, repeating the same strategy, but changing little bits about it just so that you can ultimately get the most amount of people that get to the end of that process, right? That is how you ultimately come up with the winning strategy. So it's not like there's this one little map that's pointed out. It's just you need to come up with an idea, map it out, and then fix your route. and then just run that route multiple times until like it gets tired, and then keep running it even after that.
And more and more and more. So what I'm getting from you is that we shouldn't only concentrate on the brand itself and the logos and the coloring and all of those things, but actually focus on who are we speaking to and why is it important for them to buy into our product. That is the shirt, the Nigel shirt, right?
Yeah.
Is the Nigel shirt a non-sexist, right? A non-sexist shirt, like both genders can wear the shirt, right?
Yeah.
And into consumer, where are they likely to go with this shirt? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And who are we likely to find? Who are we likely to find wearing the shirt, right? Is it someone from corporate? Is it someone from our neighborhood? Is it someone from Ariti, Mountain View? Is it someone from Kid and those type of things? And then when we establish those steps, we're able to then create this shirt around that certain group of people, and then finding a way of, okay, if we find like 1,000 Nigels, now we have to find who Nigel is attracted to or who are they attracting. And then initially that will be like the ripple effect, right? Because then if we use social media to link with our website, then it will make it possible. But that's not only one way, right? Sure. We have word of mouth, we have traditional media, but then also us going out and representing our shirts. Because most of the time you'll get business owners who are like, I have a t-shirt brand, and you're like, what's your brand, bruh? Like, and then they'll say the Nigel t-shirt, and it's like, what is this Nigel t-shirt? You should be wearing one. People like, I'm wearing one. They're like, don't you see the because ultimately at the end of the day, you have to think of yourself as a personal brand. One of my mentors as well who says, think of yourself as a personal brand. If you're saying that you're Nigel and you do this digital marketing thing, you have to represent it in the way you speak to people, right?
Right.
In that strategic sense, to be like, no, look at it this way and that way and that way. And then it gets people to start having that conversation, right? Because now, like we said before, you have financial background and you're ultimately using that financial background to amplify yourself up. And initially it's like, oh, they have a website. Can we go to that website? Oh, can we go to that page? Oh, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And then onwards, we're able to transition to more sales. We're able to do it consistent in terms of what we are seeking and the numbers, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about data at the end of the day. It's all about making sure that our market is consistent instead of just being numbers. If I'm making sense.
I'm following you, yeah.
So hopefully our audience get our dreams and actually like, okay, it makes sense, kind of making sense, and they're able to go back to the drawing board. And I guess one thing for myself that I've realized, don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Like, businesses are afraid of going back to the drawing board. Why? I don't know. And why do you think that happens? That people are afraid to go back to the drawing board? Not only in a business sense, but like, you know, say for example, like the career that you wanted doesn't go as planned, or you know, you envisioned yourself going on a vacation and it doesn't go as planned, maybe, you know, or it's paused for a moment and you have to go back to the drawing board. And some people are like, well, you're like, going back to the drawing board, do it like, you know how many times I've been going back to the drawing board? And you're like, yeah, but well, the light bulb guy who created light bulbs didn't go back one time, he went back 99 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For that 100th time, we were like, if I had given out your dance, people would have lights, would still be using candles. So what is your advice to to people in general, to young people, to people who are in our space, but also outside of our space, to actually go back and be inspired to go back to the drawing board? What is your word of advice?
Sure. So I think and it's very tough, right? Knowing when to pivot versus when to push. So pivoting would obviously mean like, okay, this plan is not working. I need to go back to the drawing board. Pushing is, okay, it's not working out yet, but I just need to keep trying, right? And the philosophy that I follow here is whenever you want to do something, right, there's obviously a fundamental belief that you have, which it might be, if I do X, then it will lead to Y, right? The philosophy states that if that fundamental belief has not changed, then you need to just keep pushing. So maybe to make it a little more practical, if I make content, more people will find out about my business, right? If that belief does not change, if that foundation does not change, then keep pushing, keep making more content, keep finding new ways to keep doing that. But if that belief changes, if all of a sudden making content does not give you new customers, then it's time to go back to the drawing board. The only question is, are you honest enough to have that conversation with yourself that this activity, this belief that I had in the beginning isn't actually true anymore? I think, not to get lost in the woo-woo, right? But like most people, when they believe something, it then becomes very difficult to break that belief because they almost attach it to their sense of self, and they're like, but if I move away from this belief, then who am I really? That's my view. Like I might be wrong about that one. I don't know. Philosophy is tough, but yeah, it's just look at it like that. Do not be afraid to go back to the drawing board when everything that you believed is no longer true, right? It means it's time to reevaluate and time to set a new hypothesis for the approach that you have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And moving on from that, how can a business stand out from or in a large market within Africa? Because we are trying to go within the African space, right? We're not trying to go global, but we're trying to go within the African space, because I believe if you can go anywhere in Africa, you can make it anywhere in the world.
Sure.
We're not giving the New York Live that says, hey, if you've made it in New York, you can make it anywhere. If you can make it in Africa, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah. So how do businesses stand out? So again, this is something that we're trying to establish ourselves and try to figure out. And the theory here that we're using is by being as authentically you as possible, right? And this is where it might get a bit, let's call it controversial, because some people don't believe in personal brands. They only want a corporate brand, right? They don't want the business to be Nigel, because if Nigel goes out tomorrow and then he's drinking and driving, then the business tanks, because all of a sudden the business is clearly associated with hooligans, right? So they may not necessarily want that. The problem is, if you have a corporate brand, it then becomes very difficult to stand out, because for the most part, corporate brands almost all look the same, right? They almost all look the same, which is why I think having a personal brand is, if you're trying to stand out, that's probably how you need to do it, because there'll only ever be one Dimbo. There'll only ever be one Nigel, right? Like in that metaphysical sense, there'll only ever be one you, right? But if you're trying to go about it the corporate route, hey, if you figure it out, let me know too. Like, I'd love to know how you stand out as just a corporate brand. Yeah.
Let's have a Zoom call.
Yeah, for real.
1,000 people will show up on the screen, be like, yo, Majid, please
help us out here.
And why is it important to not consider one aspect of a business part, but rather try to be consistent and be fluid in all of the parts? For example, not only being consistent in the marketing department, but also ensuring that the product is up to quality, right? Because I also find it a struggle when I hear a lot of entrepreneurs or business founders that say, we have a product or we have a service, right? And then our problem is not scale, but it's pricing, right? As a local brand, I'm not gonna charge like 50 rand for my product because I know I've put into my product, right? But representing to my consumer, going, Nigel, this thing costs 100 rand, and you are paying, let's say, 150 for piece sake, right? And in making sure that that 50 rand goes back into the business to be like helping me create the product even more and create a consistent demand and fulfilled other pockets within my business, and not just one random that is marketing or whatever they're putting their effort in. Because initially within a business, right, you have to be not a multitasker, but someone who puts their eggs in different baskets, right? They might not all be the same amount, but at least one egg has to go into each basket. And like if there's nothing in one basket and there are about 3 eggs in another, right?
Right.
So what would your advice be to consumers and to entrepreneurs to be like, guys, consistency is more important, and also if the struggle is pricing, right? If we're going to speak to a consumer and say our product is 200 or 150, make it clear and make it stand your ground. Because also, again, with entrepreneurs, one thing I find that it's a struggle. You say your product is 150, but because Margarita on the next door and it can only afford like, less than 150, you make it special for her. And the other don't have a problem. Now the 150, I don't know you, so you're gonna pay that 150. So what is your word of advice or your approach when it comes to that? And do you recognize that in the companies that you work with or the local businesses that you work with?
Sure. And again, let me just make sure that I understood the question, right? So are you saying how important is it that a business is consistent with its pricing? Okay. So I think it's quite important, right? When we started, what we used to do was we were of this school of thought, and maybe it's also the right way to go about it, right? You're going to hear me say this a lot, that there's very clearly a lot of ways to win because a lot of people are winning in very different ways, right? But in our experience, when we started, we followed that whole belief that don't have a set price. Talk to the people that you're working with, right? The potential client, and then find out how much value you can contribute to their business, and then your pricing will then be a percentage of that value, right? So if in one business your activities are going to generate 10 million rands worth of value, and in another business your activities are going to generate 10,000 rand worth of value, then you can't charge the 10,000 rand business the same amount you charge the 10 million rand business, right? That was how we started. Now, how we got burnt was now when you start charging people based off what they can afford, people start to mess with the numbers a little bit, right? So they'll have a conversation and be like, so what is one customer worth to you? Then they'll be like, well, this customer is worth 5,000 rand to me. Then it's like, oh, okay, cool. And how many customers do you think you can service in a month? Then they now immediately in their head, they're like, this person's trying to evaluate how much money am I going to make. So let me be like, you know what, in a month I can service 10 customers. And then we're going to come in and then we're going to start helping you. But all of a sudden, and of course, when we say I can help 10 customers, we're like, oh, okay, so you're going to make about 50,000 a month. Let's say we want 10% of that value generated, so we're going to charge you 5,000 rand, right? And then we start working with this person, and all of a sudden we're bringing in so many leads, and they're taking most of them on. And we get to the end of the month and these people have actually serviced 100 people and not the 10 that they said you can actually work with. But you've already agreed on that 5,000 Rand per month. And now you're faced with one of two options. Either back out on your agreement and say we need to renegotiate because clearly you messed with the numbers and you didn't give us an accurate representation of how your business actually does. Or take the L and be like, okay, I guess, well, you're making more money, but like, this is what we agreed to, right? So it then becomes important to then become consistent in your pricing so that you can avoid a lot of those situations where, unfortunately, maybe you're going to start to feel a little resentment because you're like, I kind of feel like you cheated me, right? Now you're making way more money and I'm doing all of this work when I could be making a little more money from the work that I'm doing, right? So if you then become consistent in your pricing, it then sets a standard that like, well, this is obviously how much I need to operate and this is how much margin I make, and it's either you can afford me or you can't afford me. And then that then becomes the demon to slay as the entrepreneur, that sometimes you're going to need to let people walk away because they can't afford you, right? Yeah, that 100 Rand is obviously better than zero, but really you know that if you take on that 100 Rand when you need 300, 500 Rand in order to operate, then that deficit needs to come out of some way. And in reality, you're probably going to pay a lot more than what you would have lost out if you didn't take on that 100 Rand. And I've been burned so many times where I took on clients because I had a bill to pay, so I took them on because they would help me pay that bill. But then next month, now I've got 3 bills to pay because I took on this person who actually wasn't covering my costs, and now I'm in a much worse position than if I just like took the L on that like one, right? So, and the other thing is, when you start becoming consistent in your pricing, you also become consistent in the people you serve. And when you talk to them, you come from a place of, I know you, right? I deal with people in your bracket a lot. I deal with people in your industry a lot. All of the concerns and problems you have, we literally dealt with it last week. So when we deal with it with you, it's not going to be anything new, right? We've got this. Like, we have this experience. Like, we already have templates and playbooks on how to, like, manage you because you are the person that we sell to. So that's personally for me why I think it becomes then important to become consistent in your pricing and ultimately the people that you serve.
It's good, you swear. Hey, this drill never age. We're in charge right now. It's heavy, but it's good. It's good. It's necessary, and it's one that I think that even myself, like, I'm learning, I'm fine tuning, and I did that wrong. So now at least I know my copy and paste won't be wrong this time. So thank you, thank you for being a master at that. Thank you for being a master at that. Now we want to ask about, right?
Sure.
In 2025, right? To introduce. In 2025, currently, what are the digital marketing trends that you would recommend or that you find interesting?
Okay, so what I find interesting, right, at the present moment is just the person who does this a lot is actually Steve Bartlett, the director CEO of their page. They do this thing where like you'd have to see the video itself. I'm gonna try my best to describe it, but a lot of their content, and you'll notice that our content is also slightly moving towards that. We're trying our best not to like entirely be there, but it's like a frame within a frame. So it's not like a full reel, but like there's like a little bit of the reel, and then there's words that like pop up everywhere, and then like there's a lot that's going on. It's basically the second child of like retention editing. And for people who don't know, retention editing is basically a style of editing where you make sure that the screen is always so busy, so active, that your audience always has something that they need to be paying attention to. And before they know it, they're lost in this loop of, because they were trying to keep track of everything, a lot of time has passed, right? It's something somewhat similar to that. I think that is a very, very cool trend. But can I be boring for like a second, right? I think people must not get lost in trends, because trends change a lot. And if you're constantly chasing trends, you're going to find yourself very burnt out. And at a certain point, you're not going to like what you do, right? Unfortunately, because you're always going to feel like, I haven't found my footing, I haven't found my place, I haven't found my voice, right? And trends and hacks and all of those things can only help so much, right? And platforms change all the time, right? If you spoke to someone 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, 6 months ago, on how to get the most people to engage with your content on Instagram and stuff, then they would have told you, get a ton of followers. Get a ton of followers because how the platform works is it takes a subset of your follower base and then it distributes the content to them. Depending on how they engage with it, then it's going to give it to more of your followers, right? So obviously, if you have 100 million followers versus 100 followers, that 1% of 100 is 1. The 1% of 100,000 is, my math is gonna suck. I don't know is that 1,000? God, I hope that's right. Especially after you said I've got a financial background. I'm like, no, what? Anyway, but effectively, it's a much bigger base to like hit with your with that content, right? That's how it used to work. That was the hack you'd use. Today, that's not how it works, right? For a lot of people who scroll on social media right now, you'll probably notice that you're barely going to see the people you follow. Unless you engage with them a lot, they're probably not the people that you see on your feed. You're seeing a whole bunch of random accounts. And that's because right now, the way that content is actually distributed is it's not just in your follower base, but rather it's your archetype. Right? Because what they started realizing is that people have a whole string of followers. You've got your aunt, you've got your mom, you've got your friends, you've got those people that you once met at a party. You've got all of these different strings of people who bumped into you, and it's not really an accurate base of the people who truly want to watch your content. So they started realizing that, okay, a lot of people that engage with your content are this archetype, so that's the subset of people that we're actually going to show your content to. So that hack no longer works. Now it's just, how good is your content for that archetype, right? So then it boils down fundamentally to the best trend, the best strategy on like content at the moment is just make content that the people who watch your content want to watch. Yeah. Boring, but like really that's really what it is.
No, but I mean, that's the truth. Like you said, I mean, for me, what I've realized is one can follow trends, like you're saying, right? But then at the end of the day, you're going to get burnt out and you're not going to find your footing, like you said. You're not going to find your niche and you're not going to find the person that you want to serve because you're following multiple trends, right? Just to fit into a cookie cutter biscuit format. And that's not for everyone, right? But take from that trend what you can and make it work. The thing is, people then are like, but how? And you're like, hey, you'll figure it out. No, you're figuring it out. So it's either we help each other or we go apart. Because then I find that when most people are like, okay, let's figure it out, and then we eventually get to the steps of like figuring it out, whatever that figuring out looks like, or your partners, or the person that you want to build with, or even yourself, even, you know what I mean? So for me, I find that quality and consistency, that I always say, it's important, because ultimately at the end of the day, you don't only want to drive sales, you don't only want to drive traction, but then at the end of the day, you want to have a community. You want to have people that can relate to your content and share it with their communities also as well. But then also create a sense of, I don't want to say belonging, but a sense of like, okay, this works, this doesn't. And we have a group that we can rely on and bounce off ideas off of. And from those different perspectives, we are then able to make our businesses or our personal brands grow, because then we are able to come to an understanding of like, we're not only surviving on knowledge, Because
Yeah.
one cannot provide only one knowledge. You have to have that understanding. Whether that understanding keeps you 5 years, 2 weeks, 10 years, that's up to you. You have to determine that path for yourself. So I really know what it's like to have things like messed up, but then at the end of the day, like you also said again, that boring part is the way you actually learn and get to understand. If you sit long enough in it to be like, okay, I'm not just here for the lesson. I'm here to also understand, and like grow my mind into knowing that I have to have an open mind.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You know?
Yeah.
Because I think we all come here for lessons, and Business Tuesday is about lessons. But then my thing is, are you able to understand? Are you able to refer back? Are you able to implement processes and these lessons that you learn from different entrepreneurs, essentially, from different industries, to be like, okay, at least we can invest in 5 times in different ways. It does not only have to be money, but then it can also be understanding. It can also be understanding that you have to be resourceful, like you're saying, because it's not only about the resource. It can be through knowing that you can serve with other people in multiple ways and not just in the one way that you know how or grow up knowing how. Get what I mean? For not only your business, but also for yourself as well. Because also, development starts with you and Nigel. It does not start with the business, it starts with you yourself. And equipping yourself with enough tools to go, okay, I have a hammer, and then I have a spear, I don't know tools, okay?
Yeah.
Don't judge.
Yeah.
But then initially at the end of the day, to able to be like, okay, I need a screwdriver, but then I don't have a screwdriver. Maybe Nato has a screwdriver, and then be able to tune into your content and actually be like, oh, okay, that's the tool actually, you know?
Yeah.
Now I've got spear, now I can add into my toolbox in what I need, and then successfully grow in whatever I need to do in this world. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to solve problems rather than just having money.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what is money if you can't solve a problem?
1000%.
You know?
1000%.
So, yeah, man. And my last 2 questions before we hang up and say our goodbyes, so that I can release you back to your team. What is your hopes for your business in this year?
Sure.
And for you as well.
Yeah, so the main thing we're actually focusing on at the moment is building out our lead magnet. So this is something we've had to do for a very, very long time, but we've been running away from it for so long that eventually the business showed us that, like, you need to implement this, otherwise I'm gonna die. So that is what we're actually sorting out at the moment. Interesting challenge, but like it's an awesome journey. So that's the ambition for the business for this year. And then of course we want to keep making better and better product, right? We want our videos, our content that we put out for ourselves and our clients just to keep getting better and better. So we're working hard on that.
And I really hope you guys turn into or are more bigger than like a TED Talk. Because in some ways, I envision you guys as like the marketing gurus of like TED Talk in a way.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Like this would be so cool. I don't know why, but then it's like, oh my gosh, this would be so cool. Like, just imagine that all these marketing gurus coming from all places of the world and just being like, yo, we are here at Toon Enterprises, you know? And
We receive.
Yeah, and to different people as well. Because I think when you eventually are able to speak to different people of different backgrounds, you are solving a problem.
Yeah.
You are solving a problem. Whatever the problem is, you are solving the problem. So yeah, man, I really do hope, and I do believe and that you guys will turn into the TED talk of your guys' industry, because honestly I look at your guys' content and you've taught me something, so I'm very thankful. The thing about lighting as well, because I didn't consider lighting before. When I first started Business Tuesday, I thought it was crazy. I was like, what? Please, like you're just saying now, right? You have the thing that had been bugging you for years, and also like I had Business Tuesday actually got going like, hey, I'm bugging you. If you don't implement this now, you go die. And I'm just like, Father God, why are you doing this to me? I'm young, I'm fresh, okay? Look at me. You want me to die? And then initially, like we've said before, you start with what you have initially,
Yeah.
and then you eventually grow. And it's grown beyond, for me, more than just the phone, right? But it's actually getting to realize what businesses are struggling with, and we're able to bounce off ideas and share ideas and actually be like, oh, okay, this business needs this, and this is how we can not only save or rectify a problem, but actually grow in terms of township economies, right? And realizing that people need to go within their communities to actually buy the product that they want. Because for me to drive or to catch a taxi to go get my product, that's not conducive. Because at the end of the day, that's when the tractor or the complaint comes in that I can't afford your product because your product is too expensive. If you had just stayed in your community long enough to know that there's a Nigel who does marketing, it can save you a lot of money, and now you don't have to complain. Because why? You're giving hope to him, and he seems to be like, oh, we can actually do this. Like, 5 years from now, actually, us being like the head talk of our industry, it's actually not that far. It's growing so fast. And now we're seeing it in a 3-year mark. Now we're seeing it in a 2-year mark. And actually being like, before you know it, like, that we just hosted like TED Talk. Like we just did that, and now like it doesn't make sense. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really hope people get to realize that there are businesses that are striving not only off of them as consumers or customers, but actually need to grow and need people like Nigel, need people like you, so that at the end of the day, you can also reach your goals, whatever that is, and actually be proud of who you are and what you represent at the end of the day. So, yeah, man, I really appreciate your wisdom. I really appreciate you coming on our platform and actually like sharing your wisdom.
Really appreciate the invite.
And like not a lot of people share their struggles. Of course, yes, when you ask about the challenges and stuff like that, but for someone to actually be like, yo, my G, actually, yeah, we're in it, but like, we're in it to win it, you know what I'm saying?
100%. 100%.
Like, yo, dude, like, I don't know how to raise my arm, but like, the guys are like, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So thank you for actually being open to our invitation and open enough to be like, guys, this is me as an open vessel, and now I'm about to close and lift myself back up and go back to work. So we're really appreciative of that. And now there's a question here that says, from Africa X Soul, that says, what keeps him going and inspired to keep pushing?
Yeah. So I think what it is, right? Whenever I think about it, there's two things. So there's the first one, which I think comes from my adult brain. I'm not too sure. I always say it. It's.
Oh, don't say that. Why you keep on saying that? Like, why? This whole thing, like my dumb brain.
No, adult, not dumb. No, I don't speak down on myself like that. No, my adult brain. No. So there's my adult brain says we want freedom, right? We want autonomy. We want to be able to do what we want whenever we want, of course, within reason. But in order to do that, it requires you to put in. I don't know. There's probably easier ways to do it, but for me, I have no choice. I have to put in the work that I need to put in so that ultimately I can give the value that I give to the world, and then the world returns that value in kind. And that usually comes in the form of like financial compensation as well as respect and power, and that lets you ultimately become the person you need to be to do what you got to do. That's the one thing that keeps me pushing, right? But then I think underneath all of that is I have this goal to make the kid me very happy. Like, little Nigel wanted a lot of things, and I love the feeling that when I look back and I'm like, I really wanted this as a kid, and here it is. Like, nothing matches that. I haven't achieved all the things I've always wanted to achieve, but the things that I have managed to make kid Nigel happy about are some of the things I'm most proud about. And here's the crazy thing is, those things don't actually have to do with money. Like, this is going to sound super corny, right? But one of the biggest things kid Nigel wanted to do was to have his own home and just have a dog run around. Like, that's it. Like, first thing I did when I moved into a space where I could get a dog is I got a dog. And to this day, I have never made a wiser decision. Like, there's nothing in my life that is a better decision than, like, getting that dog. And that's why I keep pushing the way I push. Because there's a lot of things that, like, Nigel wants, like, little Nigel wants. And, like, it requires me to grind. So that is ultimately what helps me do what I have to do.
Oh, man. And for people who don't know you, why we don't know, but we're going to ask you anyway. For people who don't know you, or people who don't know how to get into contact with your services or reach you, how did they reach you?
Sure. So there's one of two ways. You can either go to the links in our bio. There's a portal to actually apply to work with us if you're really just trying to jump and get content with us, and have our team help you ultimately achieve your goals and get more customers who are interested in your products and services. But we also, like I said, have a free WhatsApp community that we've started where everything we know, all the tools that we use, we're sharing them there for free, right? Like if you want information, if you want resources, if you want tools, then that's a great place to get it, and it should make that content creation journey a little bit easier. Or just DM us, right, on this Toon ENT profile. Send us a DM, and we really, really try to be as helpful as we possibly can, whether it's talking through whatever strategy you might have, whatever questions you might have. Here's the honest truth. I don't always have the time to sit down and have these conversations or whatever the case might be. I will do my absolute best to respond to as much as I can, but typically what will end up happening is we just make content around it, right? If we get enough questions, if we're talking about the same thing enough times, it ends up becoming our content pieces. And then we might link you back and be like, hey man, remember that question you asked? Here's like the answer. Let me know if it helps. But yeah, that's ultimately how you can get in contact with us. Links in bio or DM us and we'll chat.
I learned a lot today. From being outside, because normally I'm the outside person. It's crazy that even when outside, I felt like an unknown creature being outside, but coming back into my natural habitat and coming back to lessons and engagement, and essentially like a feast of nurturing not only my knowledge capacity and my understanding capacity, but like food for my soul. You, Mr. Nyathi, have filled my stomach, my spiritual stomach, right?
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for people like you who keep on pushing, who keep on I don't want to say striving, because then striving refers to reaching out, and it's not a reach out, but it's definitely someone who is striving, who's like, yo, being able to walk in the fire personally, professionally, in whatever ways, and to actually be like, you know what, squad, we're about to do this. Like, whatever it is, we're about to do this. And having a team that believes in you enough to be like, you know what, you might not always be right, but hey, we are going with you. And to actually be brave enough to actually be transparent and open enough about your experiences. I hope people take away not only the passion and the ambition that one should have, but that when you keep at it, you eventually reach your goal or reach your dream or whatever it is that you deem as success. And whatever background you have, use that to amplify the voice that you have. And that's one thing I've learned from this conversation. Because I thought the conversation was gonna go otherwise, and it was gonna be like a 30 seconds conversation. But what I've learned, when you stretch yourself enough in order for you to ask for help, in order for you to grow, in order for you to put your pride and your arrogance away and your ego, and actually be like, you know what, I'm gonna put in people because I need to, not because I want to, but I need to. And for you to do that the way you're doing it, in no time you're gonna be a master of your own. In no time we're gonna see you flourishing and being beyond the TikToks of the TikTok. So I really do hope that you remain grounded in who you are, and that kid never died. To be like, hey yo, we're not going from child to teenage. We see some things out, you know?
Yeah.
And eventually you'll get to look back 10 days from now, 10 weeks from now, 10 years from now, and be like, yeah, bro, we did it. You know, we did it. And at least we can raise a champagne glass to say, yo, we did it. And we are that enterprise that is global, more than global. Whether you decide to go digital with it, or whether you decide to have a building of your own and be like, we have a building, guys, we have a building. Yes. So come on through, and yeah, no man, I'm wishing you all the best. And yeah, we'll keep sharing your content and keep blowing you up because you're awesome. And you're just that awesome. And we'll keep on sharing the lesson, and we'll keep on diving into what you're diving into, because you're doing it right and you're doing it correct. And even if you fail, thank you for sharing your process, because then that makes us human. It humanizes us and does not keep us in our cages or trips us in fear like you said before. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you to your team and your squad for borrowing us for however this interview was. So I'm really thankful to your team, and I'm really thankful for you for showing up.
No, we're grateful, Dimple. We are grateful. This platform is amazing. Everything you are doing, I really wish you guys nothing but the best. You, Gift, everyone who is back there, whatever's happening. This is so cool. I am so grateful for being here. Thank you. This is amazing.
And have an awesome week. Okay. Bye.